Hello and welcome. I'm Kate.
And I'm Emily, and this is Beyond the Neurotype,
A podcast that explores what it's like to be human affirming, regardless of labels, considerate of every person's individual needs, and allowing us to, ideally, understand what is behind every individual's actions, choices, and needs.
We do this with curiosity and love as we explore these individual and unique experiences that are rich with challenges, growth, and grace.
I'm Kate, a mental health social worker and synergetic play therapist. I'm the co-founder of the Village Therapy Hub. I'm a mum to 2 adolescents, and I love understanding and exploring what is happening beneath the surface for children and adults, and what behaviours are communicating to us. But let me keep it real. Much like yours, my life is a roller coaster. So I also understand the complexities of being a carer, the challenges of the day-to-day, and I won't pretend it's all enjoyable.
I'm Emily, a neurodivergent mum to a beautiful autistic girl and wife to a wonderful autistic man. I'm passionate about celebrating neurodiversity and creating a community where people are seen, held, and loved for who they truly are. It is my hope that as you listen to the stories of our beautiful guests, you feel inspired, validated, and supported in your journey.
This podcast is recorded on the land of the Dja Dja Wurrung people. We offer our heartfelt gratitude to the traditional custodians and elders, past, present, and emerging, for continued opportunities to learn, reflect, and grow. Hi, today we are going to get to talk to Mike. Now, Mike, among many other things, is Emily's husband. He's a 36-year-old male who's lived his whole life with confusion and conflict about his needs in relation to seemingly the rest of the world. He's recently undergone a diagnosis, and today we're going to explore the process of that, the impact it's had, not only on himself, but on his family and his greater world. So let's jump in. Hi, Mike.
Okay, thanks for having me.
Great to have you here. We appreciate you taking the time. It's
No
fun to
worries.
get to chat to Emily's husband.
All good, all good.
So, Mike, maybe we'll start with when you got diagnosed and what brought about the decision to do that.
Yep, so with me, I got diagnosed, I think it was November last year, so 2023. So I got diagnosed with level 1 ASD, or autism spectrum disorder. So that's, yeah, I think how they differentiate it is they sort of go by the support needs. So level 1 is sort of low, little to none or very low kind of support needs. Level 2 is, you need a bit more, and level 3 is yeah, you need a lot of help in your day-to-day life. So with me being level 1, throughout my whole life, it was just one of those things where I just carried on as normal because the support needs weren't sort of required the whole way through, or maybe they were in some kind of respect, but yeah, I just managed to skate on through. So the reason I went and got the diagnosis is our daughter, she got diagnosed too, and that was, I think around 2021. And when we got her diagnosed, she's level 2, so it was a lot more kind of I'd say obvious or in your face with the needs that she has and the requirements that she has for support. Um, but during that process, as you naturally do, you start doing these surveys and checklists and stuff like that. And you start realizing, whoa, hang on a sec, there might actually be something going on here with me as well. So yeah, that just kind of led me down the rabbit hole of looking into it and researching it a bit and just seeing, how this could apply to me and, if I'm kind of in that bucket, I suppose. And yeah, so um, I had to go on a bit of a waiting list, like living in central Victoria. Getting these things done takes time. There's no one that you can just go to and get it done right away. I think I had to wait something like 6 months from the start to the finish to get it done. So just trying to remember what happened. I think I went to the GP and got a referral. Took that to a psychologist, and yeah, just got on the waiting list with her. Did a whole bunch of paperwork and stuff, and then eventually got in there and did like a big interview type of deal. And that went for, I can't remember, it was an hour or a couple of hours or something like that. And I had Emily there with me. Um, yeah, just to kind of um, help with the process, and someone else that knows me that psychologists can talk to about it too, um, and yeah, and verify things. And yeah, so that was it in a nutshell. After that, yeah, got the diagnosis back with a big report about how they qualify everything and all of that, and yeah, ended up being level 1 of ASD. So yeah, I went in there thinking there's no way that I wouldn't be. I think most people that get these things done would do that. They would have done all their research and have sort of self-diagnosed themselves a while back. Um, but yeah, it sort of confirmed it, and yeah, so that was good. So that was pretty much the process for me.
Hmm. So when you think about the outcome and think back to yourself as like a younger child, is this something you wish you had have known or was information that the adults in your world had about you, or do you feel like it wouldn't have made any difference, or are you actually even grateful that they didn't know it and it didn't change anything? Like, what's your thinking there?
Yeah, I think back then, like growing up in the 90s, we didn't have the knowledge and the understanding of these things as much back then. So if I did get diagnosed with it, then I suppose some things might have been a little bit different. But I don't know. I don't know. I don't think that there's that general kind of understanding for the people around me to really kind of know what to do and make a difference. Um, yeah, I mean, a lot of it was just, feeling different at school around the other kids. I always felt different. I always had like one friend at a time, one really good friend at a time, and that was kind of it. Like you might have a few more that you hang out with at school, but there was only ever really one that I would, see after school ever. So that type of deal. So that's quite sort of isolating and lonely in a way. Um, but yeah, and there's a bit of bullying and stuff that came with it as well. And I was a very placid kind of kid. I just put up with things and very docile and accepting, and yeah, went with the flow and all that kind of stuff. And so yeah, when you get called names and all that kind of stuff when you're a kid, I found it hard to stand up for myself, and I didn't like fights, didn't like conflict, didn't like thinking about the consequences of getting into fights and all that sort of stuff. So I used to just avoid it. So with that type of thing, I don't know if it would have made a huge kind of difference back then, because you still are surrounded by all the kids which are going to be kids and say and do the horrible things and all of that. Like it might help my parents understand a little bit more, but even then, I'm not entirely sure it would have swayed things that much. Um, yeah, it's a bit of a tough one because when that same understanding is what we do now, it's a whole kind of different world that you're living in. So yeah, not entirely sure on that one.
Was there anything that surprised you in the report?
Um, To be honest, no, because we'd sort of researched this, and obviously it's a pretty autistic trait to get stuck into these special interests of your own, and look into these kind of things. And we went down a pretty big rabbit hole with this type of stuff, and we were sort of beyond a shadow of a doubt with me. Um, so
I
yeah,
didn't even want to go forward with the diagnosis. It's so obvious. Why are we spending this money, get a formal diagnosis when there's no kind of, you're not seeking a diagnosis for support or anything like that. But I suppose it is then that autistic need to validate you with evidence, and you need
Yeah.
proof. And yeah, so yeah, for me, I was like, why can't you just know and self-identify? And yeah, but it was important to you to have the formal tick box
Yeah.
to say, yes, I am autistic.
It was important. Like I didn't want to just be in my own head because, everyone Dr. Googles these days and everyone gets online and, it gets into this sort of echo chamber of, oh, yes, I'm this, and then everyone supports you on that. And, for better or worse, they may or may not know what they're talking about. And so I wanted someone who, works in this space all day, every day to, tell me that, yeah, that's 100% what's going on. And yeah, so I wanted that, I wanted that tick box, not for the support needs because I don't really need any extra support with it, but just for that personal, what do they call it, self-discovery or whatever that, that you get from it that, validates a lot of the stuff that you've gone through and you can look back at things with that different lens and kind of go, oh, okay, so that's why that happened and that's why I felt like that and, all that kind of thing. So yeah, I
Yeah.
felt it was important to have someone who knew what they're talking about to tell me.
And I think that's probably been the most helpful thing out of the diagnosis, whether it was a formal diagnosis or just identifying it, but that then analysis of why you do the things you do, and for me to reflect on why you do the things you do, and
Mm,
yeah, how I can support you in other ways that maybe I would get frustrated that, you don't remember this or that, or certain things that you find maybe a bit more challenging, that I would be resentful of the fact that I would have to kind of shoulder it. Whereas now it's, yeah, a bit more understanding of why that is that way. And
mm,
yeah.
yep.
So that's interesting. So, Emily, even though you felt like you could diagnose Mike without it being formally diagnosed, the diagnosis gave you, I guess, permission to then see the things that he struggled with as being okay rather than a problem that needed to be fixed. Is that?
Yeah, no, I think that's been a huge shift since, and yeah, it's even before, I suppose, the formal diagnosis, but certainly since, we've kind of gone down that path of researching and thinking, oh, this is what's probably going on for Mike as well. I'm a lot kinder, and a lot more patient, and yeah, just things that Mike's got a lot of fixed interests, and if it's something falls within his fixed wheelhouse or interests, then yeah, it's very enthusiastic and keen, and will move heaven and earth to get something done. Whereas, yeah, if it falls outside of that, then so things I used to feel resentful that things that maybe were important to me weren't met with the same level of interest or enthusiasm. But now I'm a lot more understanding that it's probably really hard for Mike to want to go out with a whole lot of people, or talk with strangers at a dinner, or just yeah, different trying to think of some other examples that and I think a lot of the executive functioning type aspects, like Mike can be very tunnel visioned, and he's excellent at, if you want a job done and done thoroughly, he will do it. But maybe juggling the order of the tasks and managing what needs to be done and thinking of what needs to be done and things like that. So yeah, I'm a bit more patient with that, and we kind of play to each other's strengths a little bit more now, where I just accept that I take on a lot more of the management of the house, and we'll kind of handball tasks, and Mike will, no one cleans a kitchen like Mike cleans a kitchen. It's amazing. But I probably wouldn't get him to do a meal plan, or, um, yeah, things like that. So, um, yeah, I'm less resentful of that now. It's just kind of, well, this is how it is. Let's, yeah, rearrange the task lists a bit and make it fair, but in different ways rather than expecting. I used to expect him to function in the same way that I function and get resentful when he didn't. Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest change for us. Do you think?
Yeah, I think so. And one of the things that I used to do for years before getting diagnosed was, we would have big blow-ups and fights about all the stuff that you mentioned, and you'd think that I just don't care, or um, not taking your needs or wants into consideration and all that kind of stuff. And I'd get into this whole thing of trying to change myself to, to be better. Like you should see the amount of self-help books and stuff like that that I used to read. I mean, I don't do it anymore, but I used to go through all the self-help books and just see how I can, how I can change myself and just why am I in this rut and why is it so hard to change the way that I think about things and the way that I do things and the way that I relate to M and other people and all that kind of stuff. And it was, you'd always make a little bit of progress and it would just always revert though, because it's just this is who you are. And it's incredibly difficult to change, the person you are and the personality you have and, your habits and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, you can definitely change your habits, but some of the more ingrained ones that you've got, which are linked to the person you are and your personality and that, it's incredibly hard. And, I just would be cycling this type of stuff for years, always trying to, change things about myself and put things in place to try and, be better at stuff and all that. And it's just, yeah, it's very difficult. And yeah, I would always get frustrated about myself and just wonder why it wasn't happening and all that kind of stuff. And then, yeah, after getting diagnosed, like, not that it's a, cop out or anything, but it just makes you understand that, yeah, this stuff is in general very difficult to try and change if you've got that kind of brain, if you've got that, you know, that kind of neurodivergent brain. Yeah, so it's good that we can, play to each other's strengths now and yeah, just have that understanding of, I'm good at certain things and Em's good at certain things. We just try and meet in the middle with with the way that we relate to each other, I think.
And I think we come at things from a completely different lens now. We depersonalize everything, whereas previously, I used to feel personally attacked if there was a disagreement between who was doing what, or it felt really personal. And I think too, with there's so much talk about the mental load on women, and so for me, it was kind of this feminist thing as well of needing to share that mental load, and why can't you step up and take on some of that mental load? But yeah, now we approach it in a more I suppose inquisitive way if there's an issue or something, and we taking the personal attack kind of lens off, and and so it's like, okay, what's the roadblock here? Why is this not working? Or and kind of try and deconstruct what the actual issue is. And that's been, we fight a lot less.
Yeah, it's
What I
true.
love about that is that, like, in reality, relationships are two individual people with two very different upbringings, experiences of what relationships are, expectations about relationships, capacity, interest in different things. Like, all of that stuff is so true about every single relationship. And so, what this did for you guys was gave you permission to actually step into that instead of this like societal thing that exists where it's supposed to be easy and everyone's supposed to share the load, and it's, like it's all these shoulds around partnering. Like there's
Mm,
so many shoulds when you think about it that
Yeah.
society tell us are the expectations of a relationship. And in reality, when we've got two individuals in a relationship, which is what relationships are, how can we possibly just have it work magically like this societal expectation is? That's an
mm,
absolute credit to the two of you that you're able to step back from that and look at you each other as individuals and actually dissect how to make the relationship work based on your own needs rather than everyone else's expectations of what it should look like.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think doing it with our daughter first as well, when your child's diagnosed, it's this whole shedding of the expectations that you have of the societal expectations of what your whole family life is going to look like. And so I suppose having that practice first with her helped. Um, yeah, and I had, I often approach things with Mike of looking at how I would approach it with Tempe and thinking what are they actually capable of here, and also that Mike's unique, wonderful brain makes up for a lot of where I lack and like finishing things and um, attention to the finer details and things like that. So it's definitely not just me, making up for Mike's lack of ability or anything like that. It's just shifting instead of trying to split equal tasks equally, it's more now, I take on this, you take on that. Yeah, you're great at doing something from start to finish and paying really close attention to that. So you're going to do that. I'm better at the bigger picture and managing the multiple things that are going on. So I'm going to do that. And we kind of just kind of fallen into that. But it's probably been the most helpful. We've been together nearly 20 years and probably been the most helpful thing for our relationship in probably the past 18 months of kind of deconstructing all the shoulds and I think removing the shame from it. Yeah, I felt really sad when Mike was talking just before about how hard he was trying to be different and be better, and it broke my heart a little bit because I've never heard him say that before. And I didn't mean to place so much shame on him for what he couldn't do. And I think removing that shame has actually then helped him then improve a lot of these things anyway, that it removes that block. And now because he can approach me about something and know he's not going to get a lecture usually. And we can just kind of dissect it and look at it for what it is rather than what he's not doing that he should be doing. And I think that's probably the biggest change too.
mm,
I think it's interesting what you said. I've got so many things I want to say and ask. I think it's interesting what you said about trying it, well, practicing, I guess, with your daughter first. And it made me wonder about how often that's the case because we somehow accept that kids are still finding their way and, need lots of support and understanding. And so it's completely okay for us to be more inquisitive about our children's needs. But as adults, we're actually still doing the exact same thing. Like there is no finished product. We're all just trying to figure it out in every new stage. But often I think it can be the case that it's easier to give children permission to scramble around and figure out who they are than it is to give adults.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
So do you think that's been like one of the biggest game changers in your relationship? Have you experienced that too, Mike? That when now there's permission for you both to just show up in all your clunky, authentic, messy, like whatever it is.
Warts and all.
Yeah, that's after 20 years together, that's a huge amount of time.
Mm,
And kind of now you're both stepping into your authenticity.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, that's definitely right. It's like over the past 3 years or whatever it's been since we got Tempe diagnosed and then myself diagnosed, the whole I think dynamic is just shifted and just the way that we look at these things is completely different now and yeah, it's we do definitely have that permission or just that knowledge I think to look at things completely differently in a new light. So yeah, it's been really helpful because there's been times in the past where things have come to breaking points multiple times, and a lot of it is due to this neurodivergent stuff and just not coping or not understanding and all that sort of thing. And we've always managed to kind of pull it through, but we've had some, we've not had a absolutely seamless relationship for those 20 years. It's been rocky, it's been up and down. It often is, up and down. And I know that's relationships and that, but yeah, looking at it through this lens, it's just kind of like, oh, well, that a good chunk of it is, explained by that. And yeah, and it just gives you a better kind of toolbox, I suppose, to attack it with, rather than, just thinking, oh, someone's deliberately, doing this or deliberately slack or deliberately whatever or just doesn't care or whatever. It's no, it's just it's a different brain type and here's how we deal with it from now on. So yeah, you're right. It's yeah, it's definitely been a good thing in that regard. No, I'd highly recommend anyone that's thinking that they might have something neurodivergent going on with themselves to explore it and do the things online, do the Dr. Google and all that stuff, and do the surveys and all those things, and just see if you've got something to go off, and if you've got a basis to go off, and then start talking to the medical professionals after that and get your diagnosis done, and usually by that point you've got a pretty good idea. So. Yeah, and of all the things that we've mentioned, these are all the positives that come out of it. So yeah, that would be my advice.
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't all. I think a lot of it too was born out of having a child that's diagnosed. Then um, the pain of your expectations of your life um, completely changing,
Mm,
and that was really hard for me. Of what I pictured my life to look like versus kind of letting go of that. But I think because that process had happened already with my child, then I was able to go into the relationship and was much easier to just go back down to zero expectations of what it should look like and kind of rebuild it a little bit. And and it's out of that, it's actually become a whole lot better. But yeah, that painful process of losing the expectations that you had for your life had to happen first. So I don't want to sugarcoat it and pretend that it's all been, super easy, but that was I think the improvements in our relationship have been a lot easier because of that really painful process with our child.
There's so many layers to it, isn't there? There's individually processing and understanding the impact of everyone's diagnoses, but also educating yourselves individually, and then I would imagine there's a partnership around a partnership about what that then means, for your daughter and then for you both as individuals. And then to shift anything in the dynamic requires so much processing and like integrating new information and then this adaptation. I was thinking, Mike, about like going back to when you spoke about the self-help books. It was almost the process for you feels like it was almost a shedding of the books. It was like, here's this stack of shoulds that I've been reading
Mm.
all my life and that are sitting, here beside me. And then this diagnosis gives me permission to like push them over and have another set of expectations exist. But I imagine that took, some time between the two of you to also adjust to.
Yeah, like there's definitely some good kind of things that you can get from those books, like general things. But yeah, like uh, yeah, it was good to just realize that it's actually okay to be who I am, I suppose. And self-improvement's good and all that, but if it comes from a place of thinking I absolutely have to do this or my life is going to end or, relationship's going to end or whatever the big dramatic thing is, if you're being pushed like that and, you're pushing this big boulder up the hill and you feel like you're being forced to do it, then yeah, it's not as effective as if you're just curious and you want to go, yeah, I actually do really want to, improve this or do this or whatever, out of a place of, just curiosity or, just genuine, yeah, wanting to be a better person. So yeah, to be able to, push all that stuff to the side is it has been good. Um, yeah, I mean, obviously I don't want to let myself off the hook for all for anything that I do, which is, detrimental to the family or, Emily or anything like that. But it just means that it can be managed in a different kind of way now and a different kind of light and that type of thing, rather than, digging into these books and wondering why it's not happening and not changing and all that type of thing.
Mm. What was your experience, Mike, of your daughter's diagnosis?
I remember the day that it happened, and I was actually really sad. I was really emotional about it. Like the whole process, I wasn't like that at all. But when it actually came, when it actually got done, having this paperwork in your hand, and you're just like, wow, that's this is a big thing. This is a big deal, and this isn't like getting a cold that you just recover from. This is for life. This thing that we've just gone and done, this is something that she's got for life. And like she always did, but to have it on paper and have it recognized and, to be able to be going down that path now and for it to have a proper label and all that stuff, it felt quite, I don't know, heavy, I suppose is the word. It's just like, wow, it's yeah, this is a big deal. And this is officially what we're dealing with, kind of thing. So yeah, I felt pretty, emotional about it then. But yeah, after all that kind of subsides, you just sort of you get into the good things about it, like the support that you get from that diagnosis for her, and the medical professional help that you get, and the NDIS help that you get. Um, the help at school and just all of those accommodations that are out there to help you that you can now tap into with that diagnosis. So rather than walking around and saying, oh, I think she's this and I think she's that, it's like, boom, you've got this official thing which says, that you can easily get all this help. So that was, yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag, I suppose, sort of sad at the start or whatever. And then, yeah, after that, it was just a really helpful, good, validating thing to have done.
I find it funny that it was kind of almost inverse for me, and listening to you say that. It's very similar to your own, like your own experience with becoming diagnosed. Like the diagnosis was like the crunch point for you of like, oh, things have changed. Yeah, whereas for me, we've been going down the path of realizing that she was autistic and exploring that. And I suppose that I'd gone through that initial denial and then, oh my God, fear, and then learning more and learning how to manage it. And so when we got the diagnosis, for me, it was just relief. Like, oh, great, I've got this tick box. Now we can get on NDIS and get some support happening. Whereas for you, that was when you had that moment. Whereas for me, I had that moment much earlier on. Yeah, it's just an interesting difference in the way that our brains work. But it's, yeah, very similar to your own experience with
I
when you
think
got
that's just
diagnosed. Yeah.
I think that's just me with the liking the officialness of
Yeah.
things. Like I'm very much into that. Like I like, I suppose, those ordered structures about things and systems and the way that people work and you know ranks and that type of thing. I like that kind of that set structure. So like when you've got something on paper which that tells you that verifies what you've been thinking all these years or whatever. It's like, oh, cool. So you're part of that sort of structure now, which is a very autistic thing. But yeah, so that probably explains why I thought that way.
So, in thinking that, Mike, do you think Tempe's diagnosis was probably necessary for you to be able to adapt your parenting as much as you guys have since her diagnosis? Like, if that diagnosis hadn't have happened, do you I wonder, I'm just curious, whether you might have tried to continue to push the parenting model that you guys had in place that perhaps wasn't working particularly well because it wasn't meeting her where she was at. Would
Yeah.
you have thought, yeah, would you have, yeah, do you get what I'm asking?
Yeah, for sure. I think it definitely helped with me. It helped because, like I say, you get access to all those resources now, and like the medical professionals that you talk to, and just your kind of world expands a bit more with the support that you get around it. It's like we were definitely adjusting things beforehand, but yeah, afterwards it's just like it just makes it a lot more real. For someone like me, at least, it just makes it real and um, how do I put it? Not that it wasn't before, but to have that official kind of thing, it's just like, wow, okay, yep, this is 100% real. It's not in our heads. It's
Yeah.
not something we're doing or whatever or um, anything we're doing wrong or what. It's just yeah, it's official now, and yeah, you can start looking into that stuff a bit more and going from that, using that lens as you should have been, I suppose.
You could have been. There was
Could
no
have been.
truth there.
Could have been. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's really interesting because I think we try out stuff as parents, and sometimes we just have like no concept of what's going to work, what might work. We're just like, throwing darts around a board and hoping that something sticks.
Yeah.
And then I wonder if the experience of the diagnosis, particularly for a neurodivergent mind as well, was to go, oh, okay, cool. Now here's the set of guidelines to parenting I can kind of go to and look at instead of trying out all of these different things.
Yeah. Yeah. 100% it was. Yeah. Yeah. It just focuses you a bit more and puts you on the right path. But for yeah, like you say, rather than throwing the darts at the board and hoping one hits a bullseye, it's like, okay, now we're going to narrow the field of vision to the dartboard,
Yeah.
and yeah, we're going to have a much better chance of actually hitting something, and making it connect. So
Mm.
yeah,
I,
for me that was important.
I think you had a lot easier time adjusting once, yeah, we were close to that formal diagnosis too, that, yeah, there was some validation in, and I could find some kind of evidence that drastically changing the way we parent, yeah, was important for an autistic child. And I think that was easier, yeah, for the way your brain works and liking evidence. I think for me, it all happened much earlier in kind of that pre-diagnosis stage where that was kind of the biggest shift happened for me. But I think, yeah, probably for you, it was closer to when she was formally diagnosed. And yeah, it was probably easier for you to reconcile and justify these big, probably quite controversial changes in what we were doing.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yep.
And I feel like parenting handbooks are a bit like the self-help books that Mike was reading, They're generic, they're pretty neurotypical, they don't really take into account individual needs, they're quite like robotic and system-based. So the information allows you to then seek out parenting books and self-help books that are more considerate of your neurotype.
yeah, being able to tap into that information and particularly online and in yes, support groups on Facebook was really the game changer for me in terms of changing the way that we parented and looking at Ross Green's philosophy in particular about kids do well when they can. And so the focus became getting her to the point of feeling like she can do well rather than punishing her for not being able to do well, and putting her mental health and her well-being as number one priority instead of behavior or school or attendance or all these other more traditional check boxes. And are we sleep training properly, are we doing discipline properly, all of that kind of yeah, she openly tells me that I was a bad mother until until she got her diagnosis, and then I became a good mother.
Hey, the fact she's even saying you're a good mother at
I
all is
know.
pretty bloody incredible.
I was pretty proud of that. I was like, wow, okay, I must be doing something right. A
Yeah.
compliment.
Not many of us hear that as parents ever.
Yeah, so yeah, that was yeah, you don't realize how traumatizing the traditional kind of way of parenting, and intuitively we both knew it wasn't working and it wasn't right for her or for our family, but when every single professional and person around you is kind of reinforcing it, and so you're kind of looking at yourself, well, maybe I'm not tough enough, maybe I'm doing it wrong, maybe I'm this, that, the other thing. Yeah, I think that diagnosis for us then really just gave us the permission that we needed to stop all of that and look at it completely differently. And our life and our parenting experience is different to the majority of people, but there's a whole lot of other people out there that have experienced what we've experienced, and yeah, being able to get that advice, really that community, that accessing the neurodivergent community was the biggest thing, I think, of yeah, getting that permission to step back and focus on getting her yeah well and coping and happier within herself, and then the other stuff will come.
And I feel like it's probably realistic to think that if you've grown up neurodivergent yourself and that's never been known, that part of you as a parent would be like, come on, kid, like just adapt. Like,
Yeah,
I
Mm.
adapted. You just gotta like, don't you know how to fake it till you make it?
yeah, just shut it down.
So I think because so many of us that have lived lives not having that information have learned to just mask the hell out of it. And so part of parenting that is like, how about I equip you with the same skills I had, which is how to survive it?
Yes, absolutely. Do you find that, Mike? Or
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And a lot of the time, Tempe will kind of lull you into a false sense of security or whatever, and come across as very, neurotypical with a lot of things. And this is how I think a lot of people outside of our family view her, especially if they're fairly close to her, and she's comfortable around them. Then a lot of the time she'll come across as just a regular kind of kid. But then, something will happen which will bring it kind of crashing down. And then, you realize, oh, that's gone too far, or she's been pushed too far in that direction, or she didn't like that and, is having a bigger reaction than the other kids or whatever.
Mm.
So it's just one of the big things for me is, yeah, trying not to get sucked into that false sense of security and just always having that lens on that, she's she's going to have some other support needs required around the things that she does, even if she appears to be normal from the outside, because we're the ones that have to, realize that and advocate for that, because the friends and the people that she's around won't be looking at it, through that lens as much, or at all if they, don't even know anything about her diagnosis. So yeah, that's one of the tricky things as well.
Yeah, I think that masking though is so detrimental to your mental health, and I think she definitely has periods where she is excellent at masking, and then it pushes her to kind of
Bottles up.
a breakdown. And I think yeah, we probably survived our childhoods and early adulthood and things because probably better at masking longer term. Um, yeah, I think for me, going back to what we were talking about earlier, um, definitely there was this frustration of all I knew was to shut things down and just suppress it, and yeah, you just shut it down and you move on and you keep going, and that not being an option was a bit of was a bit mind-boggling for me, and that's taken a lot of unlearning, and but it's been so good for me, and that goes into that pain of losing the expectations, but out of that comes the freedom of losing the expectations, and um, yeah, life looks a little bit, different to what I anticipated, but um, we all have the freedom just to authentically be ourselves now. Mike and Tempe don't have to be, these people in my imagination of what the perfect child and the perfect husband would exactly look like and say and do. And, they're their own people, um, and I get to be that too. And yeah, I think that's been uh, certainly for me, it's been a big process in unpacking that, suppressing my feelings all the time as a, likely neurodivergent person myself, and yeah, undoing that has been a big thing for me. Yeah, that's having her has given me permission to do that for myself.
Mm. What has been the biggest change of expectations, do you think, in terms of parenting, what you expected that to look like and what the reality of it is?
Everything. Absolutely everything. Like, yeah, I've been, and I still am, struggle with the expectations thing of what, what you thought it was going to be like to be a parent, and what it was going to be like to have a kid and all that kind of thing. And um, yeah, like pretty much every single facet of what you thought that was going to be like is just, it didn't happen. Didn't happen, and it never will happen. And that's, that can get really, you can get really sad about that and frustrated and all that kind of stuff. But, you have to adapt to the fact that, it's just, yeah, not going to be that way. But there will be other things as well. It's not all kind of doom and gloom. It's just a different way of going about it. Um, but yeah, you definitely, do have those times where you kind of, I suppose, even grieve a bit for it, because, this isn't, you feel, sometimes you feel cheated. You feel like this isn't what you signed up for. This isn't what you wanted. And, it's all just so hard all the time. But yeah, you just have to adjust, and see the good in it too, and in the experiences that you have, and adjust everything to a more appropriate level, I think. Yeah, so yeah, it's definitely been a big thing for me as well.
Do you think
I
another word for expectations is fantasy?
Yeah. Yeah.
And perhaps actually no one has it? I'm just really curious.
Yeah. Well, like you've got this, I suppose, path or pathway or whatever in your head, this way that you think that it's going to go, and
Mm.
that you've thought about your whole life or thought about leading up to having, children and that. And yeah, when it's nothing like that at all, and when you see your friends who are, all got neurotypical kids and all that kind of stuff, and how easy things are, and that it's just like, oh man, it's just yeah, you can kind of grieve for that a little bit. But yeah, I mean, like you say, expectations there, no one knows what's going to happen in life, and yeah, you have to adjust the way that you go about it and just move forward. And yeah, like I think like what we've been talking about, the diagnosis has been a big part of that, and having the right tools and understanding and all that to yeah, um give you the right skills to do it.
Yeah, I think fantasy is such a good word for it. For me, it definitely I had big fantasies of what yeah, I was going to have 4 to 6 children and adopted one. um, but I had big fantasies around what the home life would look like, and the activities um and family holidays where we'd all, have fun. And holidays are actually really hard for an autistic person sometimes, it's a different environment, it's different food, it's
Yeah.
um and yeah, I used to get so upset when they wouldn't go well, and yeah, just all the little activities that I thought in my head that I would do with my children, and we would all love it, and yeah, be skipping around smiling and singing, and um yeah, that was a big part of the grief for me that when I realized that wasn't probably going to be my reality, but it's um allowed me to tap into other things, like the conversations that I have with her amazing. She's so smart. And yeah, when I embrace her interests and we game together, and often the three of us will game together, and we found ways of doing holidays that, um, yeah, look, are more tolerable for her and for Mike, because that's something Mike struggles with too, is that change in scenery and routine. And even though they both want to go, there's a lot of accommodating that needs to happen there. So now we just recognize that, and yeah, we do it less often, but um and I've got a girlfriend that I go away with now. And so when I want to go away and do lots of activities and action packed, I go away with a friend. And um and yeah, our holidays are accommodating for all of us now. So I think that's been good for me too, is being able to um, change my expectation that my family is like my whole world. And well, they are in terms of importance to me, but um, they don't have to be everything. And I can still experience these things in my life in a different way, and tapping into friendships more, and doing stuff on my own a lot more, and things like that. Yeah.
And it's so interesting because I think this comes back to that fantasy comes off a societal should. We've grown up watching the movies of those families that just love each other so much, and they do all these things together, and they share
Yeah.
the same interests, and there's almost this societal should, like there's certain things that there's like it's just not even said but expected that will happen when you have a family. And often they're untrue, but they sit there as really fundamental building blocks. And they're things like You'll all go on holiday together. You'll, share bedrooms. You'll um, like the same things. You'll have the same friends. Like that,
Yeah.
and they're so often untrue because again, and we've come back to where we started, we're individuals
Yeah.
existing in a relationship. And so we bring our individual stuff. But
I,
as soon as something doesn't happen that fits one of those shoulds, we go straight to this deep sense of shame. My relationship isn't good enough. It's not like everyone else's because all we're seeing of
mm,
everyone else's is the social media posts that they want everyone to see. We're never seeing the struggles. So it's like we just compare ourselves to the facade that exists out there for everybody else and think that because we're not doing all of these things. And the holidays is a perfect example of that. Like, why would three individuals all happen to want to go to the same place and have the same type of holiday?
yeah. And do
Like,
exactly the same things the whole time. And
Mm.
yeah, I think as women too, especially we're sold that fantasy
yeah.
from girlhood. And yeah, for I had quite a religious upbringing that placed a lot of importance on that as well. And so um yeah, for me, it was kind of unthinkable that that wasn't how life went. But yeah, that's been really freeing. Like, I love my girl trips with my girlfriend, and we go now every year. We'll go somewhere together, and I come away feeling super energized and not resentful, and um, and feel like myself. And yeah, Mike's able to do the same. He's, goes on very occasional boys' weekends, and they take their computers and um and I've got no interest in that. Um so yeah, and just by focusing on what everyone wants and needs, and yeah, we kind of are better at making sure everyone's happy, not just making mum happy to um, you know, tick the box of happy family holiday. Um, yeah.
Have you found, Mike, that that's been like, what's that been like as an adaptation for you? Did it make sense? Was it hard? Like, to
Um,
Emily going off on a holiday once a year with a friend, leaving you behind to dad on your own.
it makes a lot of sense, and it works well because M is far more outgoing than me. I'm pretty introverted. I'm happy to stay at home and just, potter around and do the, tinker in the garage, or, play on my gaming computer, or, fiddle around with computer parts, or play around in my car, or I've got, a bunch of most of my interests don't involve big groups. Most of those special interests are, gaming and, cars and DIY stuff and all that. It's all very just individual focused. And so, yeah, a lot of the stuff I do is just very I wouldn't say isolated, but it's just very individual. It's just something that, you do as a one person type of deal. So yeah, M craves going and, getting out there and going and doing things and seeing things and seeing people and, oh, what's happening this weekend, and, this thing's on in town and all this sort of stuff. And it's like I usually don't care about that type of stuff. It doesn't interest me, but the things I just mentioned do. So for her to have an outlet and, people to go with and all that type of thing, to go and, satisfy herself with, feeling like she's not missing out and all that has been really good. And, there's a lot that we do too, and we're putting a lot more focus at the moment, especially on the date night type of thing. Even I've got something in the calendar now, like once a month, that we even if it's just once a month, to go out together and have a dinner together or do something,
Yeah.
just to make sure that we're good, then that's, that's a good baseline. Um, but yeah, M goes out and does those things with her friends and, suggests things, and sometimes we do things together as well, which is good. But yeah, it relieves a lot of that pressure and I suppose, resentment and stuff like that, and that feeling like you're being dragged along. And and for our daughter as well, it's very much like that. She agrees to go to even less than anything that I would. And so, yeah, if Em wants to go and do something, then often I'll be, with Tempe at home or something like that, so that she can, go and do that. So yeah, it's been a good shift in that regard.
Yeah, that was really hard for me to let go of that.
Mm.
That was
That
a big,
fantasy.
yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it? Because the reality is that no one person can meet all of our needs. Like there are parts of our needs that have to be outsourced to a variety of people. It's why we have, different friends in our world. It's, whatever one friend you had at a time as a kid, Mike, was serving the need you had most at that moment. And when that child
Mm,
stopped serving that need, you moved on to another kid who served your next need better
hmm
because we outsource parts of our needs and the expectation that our partner is going to be the one person that can like meet all of that is so unrealistic and so much pressure
mm,
and probably why so many relationships don't work out because we look at the pieces of the relationship that don't meet our needs and see them as problems rather than, I guess, opportunities to find other people to meet them.
yep, that's right. And I think too, like there's no perfect person out there that's going to tick all those boxes as well. Like you might have someone that has this exact same interests as you and does the same things as you and all that, but then they might be absolutely terrible in other areas. And it's just yeah, you're right. You're not gonna find that perfect person. You need to outsource these things, and it probably comes back to that whole tribe thing back in the day, like your village and your tribe, and the people that you surround yourself with. I mean, we don't really have that as much anymore, and
Yeah.
so finding those people that can fill those needs is pretty important, I think.
I think you're
Um,
so right because that a village would have been made up of a massive variety of people with
mm,
interests and abilities and conversation styles and ways of connecting. And, some were explorers and some were not, and some were fixers and,
mm,
DIYers and some were not. Like it's that you're so right that this idea that we talk about it takes a village to raise a child, but it also takes a village to support an individual. Like it
mm.
takes a village to support a human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And yeah, with the way that we kind of live these days, it's you don't really have that anymore, and it takes a lot more, I suppose, seeking to find those
Mm.
individual people to fill those gaps for you. So yeah, it's a lot. I would say it's a lot harder these days to find that, but once you do, it's it can be a good thing if you don't have all that expectation put on your family. So yeah.
And
yeah.
in a lot of ways, it's harder because there's an expectation that we don't need it. Like we should ourselves into this shame of,
Mm,
yeah. So we don't give ourselves permission to
mm.
own the fact that we do need it and to therefore seek it. We're all walking around trying to like, contain and not be too needy and not to be too much and not expect too much. And ah,
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's become a lot easier, especially for me since, and it's probably born out of this process of unpacking the expectations um, but for me as a neurodivergent person, I always struggled finding my village, and also because a lifetime of shoving everything down and
mm,
suppressing everything and not embodying your authentic self, since we've been able to shed that, you're able to tap into your people so much more. And I feel like at this stage of my life, I've really found an amazing village and some amazing friends, and that has then made it a lot easier to not rely solely on the relationship, and especially because we did get together so young and we've moved overseas together, and so it has been just us two for a lot of it. Yeah, that finding that village was so important, but it really can be a lot harder for a neurodivergent person to find that village. But yeah, really embracing who we are as people and shedding that kind of shutdown. I was always trying to make myself be different and fit in and kind of slot into groups and never quite felt right. And now that we're able to kind of just be, I've found my people.
So for anyone out there listening, if you haven't found your people, keep looking.
They're there.
Just keep hunting, keep trying different places, showing up areas of interest, just get online, join communities, find them. All right, one last question and then we'll wrap up. Mike, I want to know if you could go back and tell young Mike something, anything, what would it be?
Um, Probably because of how, different I felt, especially at school and growing up and all that sort of stuff. Just I suppose telling him that it's okay. It's okay to feel that way, and you're actually not really that different. And there's a lot of people out there just like you, and it's okay to have your one friend. It's okay to be, quite shy and this and that, and to have your interests, and you're not doing anything wrong, I suppose. No matter how, many people out there are, trying to shove you into this particular box of trying to be this particular person or whatever, you're doing okay and everything's gonna be fine. Um, that would probably be the biggest thing is just reassuring myself that it's all going to be okay. There's a reason why you are the way you are, and just embrace it and just don't feel like anything's don't feel negative about it. Don't feel like it's a bad thing or anything like that. It's quite a good thing in a lot of ways.
Well, I mean, the benefit of those fixed interests is that you become very good at things. Like
Yep,
you have a certain wheelhouse of things that you're very good at.
yep.
Unlike some of us who fluff around trying to do everything all at once and end up, never actually conquering anything.
Well, this is the
Jack
big
of all
thing
trades,
too.
master of none over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the big thing too. I mean, for me, it was always computers and video games and IT and all that stuff. And I was into it in the, you know, early mid 90s kind of thing before it was kind of mainstream and before everyone had computers and all that sort of stuff. So, now I can say I've got more than 30 years experience in computers because that was the strongest interest of my life and absolutely dominated everything. And, now I work in IT.
Yeah,
So it was only natural. And not only do I work in IT, I work in IT with no qualifications. It's all just experience.
yeah,
So yeah, anyone out there who has those fixed interests where that's their thing, then you can really tap into that and get into something amazing with that later on in life and follow that as your passion. It's a real gift because, like you say, a lot of people go through life and they don't realize what their, passions are and what they want to tap into and what would make them happy to do it as a job and all that type of thing. So it's that part of it can be a real superpower.
yeah. And you've just named something. Gosh, I wish we had more time because you've just created a curiosity for me that we'll explore another day around the fact that IT was a strong interest for you back when IT wasn't really a thing.
Mm,
And so the fact that we get concerned about how strongly interested some of our neurodivergent kids are in IT now is almost a contradictory term because it was a strong interest when nobody cared about it.
Mike's parents tell a story about Mike being forced to play soccer because they were concerned about his well-being and he needed to play a sport. And
Get me
and
off the
Mike,
Nintendo and
yeah,
all
get
We've
him
been
that.
off
doing
the
that forever,
Nintendo.
haven't we? Goodness me.
And he sat in the middle of the soccer field and cried because he wanted to go home and play his Nintendo. And I used to think that was horrible, that this 5-year-old was so addicted to his Nintendo that he was sitting in the middle of the soccer field crying, wanting to play. But now it's just like, yeah, just embrace it a lot more. And it's, you're doing really well in life, and and that addiction is actually just a hyper focus and a special interest, and
and pays off in the long term.
Pays off in the long term. So it makes me feel better about my own child's device usage. But yeah, I did used to judge your parents for that, and now I'm sorry.
So interesting.
Hopefully they don't listen to this.
It all worked out in the end.
It did.
Yeah, it did.
Oh, thanks so much for your time, Mike. We really appreciate having you on. It's been a really great conversation, just taking us down so many paths that were really interesting, and I think will be of great value to our listeners. So thank you.
Thanks for having me, Kate. Appreciate it.
For more information on today's conversation and guest, head to the links provided in the description. Please like and subscribe to keep up to date with more content, and it helps us out with the algorithm too. Beyond the Neurotype is not a licensed medical or mental health service, and any information or advice given is general in nature. Please seek professional help if anything mentioned in today's episode has raised questions or concerns.